Okay, so would you guys like to kick us off with some of the difference between uni and A-level maths?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest shock for me was like the introduction to pure maths. Like, it really took me off guard. Because what I always thought I knew what pure maths was. It's just like rigorous thought and all this kind of stuff. But your A-level was that kind of thing. You get to university and it's just a completely different ballgame. It's a completely new and alien thing. I thought it was really challenging at the start.
Yeah, what you'll find is like a lot of the stuff you call pure A-level, it's just not pure at all at university. It's basically just considered applied. So all the things you'll find in the core modules or even in the further pure modules are pretty much all applied. Like if you look at a step paper and you look at the pure section, actually most of that would be considered applied at university.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So yeah, you really haven't got much experience with it at all before you start.
It's a lot more rigorous than anything you do at A-level, and like there are a lot more proofs. So I guess at A-level you don't really do any proofs at all.
No.
Well, I guess you do a bit on proof binder, but like,
like trig proofs.
Yeah, that's more of a show that than a proof sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's a massive difference. It's like you're going back to first principles when you're proving in university. Like it's something you wouldn't even consider at A-level.
You almost lose the computation skills. Like I tried to do integrals from STEP and from A-level. I couldn't do them because like how often we don't do those kind of integrals anymore. Like complicated substitutions or spotting, this kind of thing. I don't know.
Also, at university we don't use a calculator at all, so it's never about the numbers. It's not about the numbers anymore. In fact, I think I was quite stressed out about how we didn't use any numbers for like a whole term.
Oh, it's just letters with 0, 1 and infinity.
That's it. Used. That's our range. Maybe if you're lucky, you've done it too.
If they're being like extravagant. True.
Right. Yeah. So, with regards to like the differences between kind of how you do a proof at A-level and how you do a proof at uni, we have this example here, which we actually learned in one of our analysis courses, which is that the limit as n goes to infinity of 1 over n is equal to 0. So intuitively what this means is if I pick a big number and divide 1 by something, 1 by that number, I'm getting close to 0, and if I pick an even bigger number, I'm getting even closer to 0, and eventually I'm going to get to 0. So this seems quite obvious, but we couldn't actually prove this straight away at university, because what we're doing when we do this is we're actually assuming that n can go to infinity. So in other words, you can always find a bigger number. So this is an example of how rigorous you'll have to be.
Yeah.
So how do I know that there's always a bigger number I can pick so that this limit will get close to 0? And we call that, we say that the real numbers are not bounded above, which is what you have to prove before you can prove a limit like this. So this is just the sort of example of something that you'll get.
Yeah.
And you also have to prove things like 0 is less than 1.
Yeah.
But like you work out the complex numbers, like because they don't have an order, they work completely different.
Yeah, and so the kind of way you can tell whether you're an applied or a pure person at this point is a pure person goes, oh, that's really interesting. 0 is less than 1. I'm really happy I understand why that is now. Whereas if you're an applied person, you'll say, yeah, so what? I knew that already.
Yeah.
Let's go.
How's that useful? Yeah.
I mean, that being said, you might think you're one way before university, and
Yeah,
it's
it's very
completely
true.
different. Because I mean, as long as you give everything a go, like really try with the pure before you give up.
Yeah, don't get put off by it, because it's really hard at first. Well, for most people, unless you have a lot of Olympiad stuff, it's brand new, completely alien.
Yeah.
And my mistake was I didn't try hard enough with it. And if I really put the work in, and actually you start to enjoy it after a while, you start to actually be able to do the questions.
Yeah.
And you start thinking about what you're actually learning, it becomes interesting. So keep at it.
Yeah, and some people do find they really love it. So like, it's just you'll discover it soon enough. Probably about a year in, you'll realise probably what you prefer.
Also, like a lot of the difficulty came from the fact that we were unfamiliar with it.
Yeah.
And if we'd actually kept at it and become more familiar with it, I think we'd have all been able to do it. It's just because we were like, each lecture, we were like, we don't remember what happened in the last lecture.
Oh, yeah.
We haven't looked at it in between. We don't know what the words.
And that comes down to
mean.
work ethic as well.
Yeah.
If you just review the lecture before, that's quite an important thing for your first term. First year can be hard to keep motivated because it's university excited, but it's always smart to look back at the lecture before you go to this one, so you know what they're following on from and you understand the material. Because learning as you go along, like for example, this year I'm planning on trying to learn a few theorems as they go along, so you understand the course and you know what's going on throughout the year.
This is the difference with school, because at school, the teachers in the lessons will help you a lot more to make sure that you understand it and stuff like that, but at uni you have to put that effort in yourself.
Yeah. It's completely independent. If you haven't done it, you haven't done it, you fail.
Also, just the pace at school is so much slower, so what you might do in a few weeks at school would probably be covered in one lecture at university.
Oh yeah, you do that. You recap the entirety of A-level in a lecture.
Yeah.
It's quite depressing, really. So,
That was a year of my work.
yeah, and it was hard at the time.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and that being said, also like stuff with example sheets, doing them as we go along. Like,
Yeah,
so
after you've done the lecture.
yeah,
And
because
putting the
it
hours
helps
in.
you so much to understand it if you're doing the hard problems whilst you're at it, rather than leaving it till the night before, not really getting a lot of time to do it.
Sound familiar?
Also, another difference with like university maths compared to school maths is when you're doing school maths, you can have a lot of like exercise on everything. So you might have just learned about integration, and you've got a whole exercise with 20 questions to do. If you learn it at university, you might be given one example in the lecture, and then if you understand it, that's great. If not, it's up to you to try and think up your own examples to try and get a better feel for it.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to give you exercises to do. They're just going to throw you in the deep end with a really difficult problem. So that's another like quite big difference. Like there's no exercises, it's only problems, which can be it's more interesting, but it can also be annoying if you don't fully grasp something.
Oh yeah, a lot of it's on you to research it online and read books and find as much as you can on that topic. Because otherwise you're gonna struggle if you're not really thoroughly looking into things. Like I mean, my friend at college had done so much preparation. He'd seen some of the exam questions before online and stuff, and similar things. It's always down to how much work you want to put in. You just get familiar with the material and just go for it. There's also the matter that you can actually have a question like where a quarter of the marks are predicated on you knowing a proof. So you here's a proof, state it and prove it, and that's just literally bookwork. And in fact, there can be whole questions based on just knowing your material inside and out. So it's not just about can you see this difficult step and can you. It's not the same as step in that sense, because a lot of it is have you put the hours in, do you know the material well enough, do you know the proofs, which is quite nice because you get paid, you get the payoff if you've worked, but you also suffer if you haven't.